Hi friends, welcome to our channel. Today we continue our series on how to influence men. In part 1, we discussed a few strategies. Now we'll look at the following examples that will help you better understand and manage male behavior. These methods, based on psychology from life, are easy to apply. Follow us, ready to go deeper? Rule #40. Don't tell too much about yourself. Any information about you can be used against you. This is the law of manipulation. If you have identified a manipulator, try to deprive him of his main tool, information about yourself, because the most effective way to resist manipulation is not to tell anything about yourself. In reality, it can be difficult to resist the manipulator's offer, especially if he is sympathetic to you. But it is still in your best interest to pull yourself together and refuse his offer. First, take a defensive stance. Ignore his suggestions as much as possible. However, to get his way, a clever manipulator may invite you to visit a trendy club or a newly opened bar. Refuse without giving a reason. Do not go into details and tell him that you prefer other types of holidays or that you do not like noisy places. By entering into explanations, you help the manipulator. You give out invaluable information about yourself, which he will definitely try to use. In a week, he may present you with a ticket to the cinema or theater. Maybe he really wants you to like him, or maybe it's just a tactical move. More likely, he's just looking for a special way to approach you. He's trying to use the knowledge you've given him about you. As soon as you accept his offer, he will immediately start using his influence on you. Girls very often fall for the bait of clever manipulators, making contact with them, telling them about interests and hobbies. Experienced men from one small conversation will immediately extract all the necessary information about you and use it next time. Therefore, when fighting a manipulator, be vigilant. Don't engage in long conversations. Don't talk about your hobbies and secrets. If you don't want to seem impolite, answer all his questions abstractly. For example, that you don't feel like talking, that you are not in the mood for fun, or that you have too much to do. With such answers, you will stump even the most skillful manipulator. He will not be able to learn anything new about you, and, most likely, after a while, he will be forced to give up the dream of achieving the task himself. Rule #41. Try not to show pity. Some men try to get from a woman their own very effective way. They cause pity. The mechanism of this manipulation is clear. A woman is unlikely to refuse to help a man unhappy and offended by fate. In order to arouse a woman's pity, men can pretend to be the most miserable creatures in the world, make up a story about how they were kicked out of work or abandoned by their wife. In communication with such unhappy men, you need to be very careful. If you do not know your interlocutor well and you do not have the opportunity to check his legend, then do not rush into his position. Leave yourself the legal right to doubt. You can easily determine whether he is telling you the truth or trying to deceive you, to take advantage of the effect of his story. Sympathize with your companion and try to find out some details of his unhappiness. If he refuses to tell you his story in detail, he probably wants to deceive you and intentionally cause pity. After all, if he did not want to remember about it, it is not clear why he even started to tell you about his hard fate. There is another sign that can distinguish the imaginary unhappy from the real one. Imaginary unhappy people, as a rule, very pathos narrate about their fate. It seems that they retell a romantic story borrowed from some novel. People who have really experienced a tragedy either very dryly state the facts of their biography or try not to mention it at all. Once you have identified the manipulator, keep your eyes open. Of course, you can sympathize, but at the same time remain sober. Do not lose the ability to analyze what is happening. After all, the feeling of pity deprives a woman of this ability. Sometimes she gets confidence in the interlocutor when he does not deserve it. You will finally realize that you have a skillful actor in front of you when, at the end of your story, your interlocutor asks for a favor. He seems to apologize for his request. I've been made redundant and I have no money left. The last of my money went to pay off my loan or my daughter's wedding. Could you lend me some until I get back on my feet? Or another option. My wife left me and I am so lonely. I just need a woman's caress and tenderness. Of course, it is very difficult to refuse such requests, but you must remember that what you are facing is not an unhappy person, but a skillful manipulator who uses his mask to get what he needs from you. In such a situation, you need to stall for time. Try to find an opportunity to think about his request. Try to dislodge the manipulator from his thoughts, to make the pity caused by him give way to common sense. It is best to leave him for a while in order to weigh everything and make the right decision. After you come to your senses, you will be able to soberly assess the pros and cons of his proposal. Rule number 42. Always be wary of overly kind compliments. Remember Krylov's famous fable, The Crow and the Fox. In this work, Fox acts as a very real manipulator. Her manipulation succeeds. She receives from the crow cherished piece of cheese. And the essence of this manipulation is ordinary flattery. It is known that women love ears. For them, there is nothing sweeter than the music of admiration, especially if these words sound from the lips of a man. Most women simply lose their heads and become convenient victims for the manipulator. When should you be wary? Firstly, if a man has not often complimented you or has never complimented you at all, and then suddenly he's been replaced. He's been telling you all day that you look wonderful, noticed your new shoes, and appreciated your perfume. This is the first signal that something is wrong. The second danger bell. If a man's compliments have become more sweet, more like flattery than true admiration, this is also a sign that the man needs something from you. The essence of manipulation is very simple. A woman loses her head from compliments and becomes easily controllable, more trusting, begins to feel sympathy for her interlocutor. It is then that a man can ask her for something. How to resist a manipulator who tries to gain your trust by saying a lot of compliments. How to determine whether his admiration for you is sincere or fake. This is not an easy task. You can cope with it if you have adequate self-esteem and are able to objectively evaluate yourself and your own efforts. Try to analyze the compliments of your interlocutor from the point of view of proximity to the truth. Of course, any woman is pleased to hear dithyrambs, especially from a man, but try to come down from the clouds to the ground and understand how much these praises correspond to reality. Perhaps his words are more like flattery, spoken with a self-serving purpose. You should be wary if your interlocutor praises the slimness of your legs with the passion of a poet, but they may not be slim. Or if he compliments your exquisite manner of dressing, but you feel that your taste is not all right. As soon as you realize the flatterer, immediately start defensive actions. You can use his own weapon. Give him 2 or 3 compliments that are far from reality. Play with your interlocutor in The Heroes of Another Famous Fable by Krylov, The Cuckoo and the Cock. The cuckoo praises the rooster for praising the cuckoo. Darling, those earrings match your eyes perfectly. You have such a great eye for costume jewelry. Could you help me pick out a gift for my girlfriend? I'd love to, but with your impeccable taste, you don't need an assistant or even a contraindication. Rule number 43. How to be if a man creates the appearance of intellectual superiority. Women prefer intelligent men, and therefore representatives of the stronger sex try to make the appropriate effect to gain confidence. Your interlocutor rushes with sayings of philosophers and uses unfamiliar words. He seems too clever to argue with, and you do not even try to prove your point of view, even though it is fundamentally different from the speaker's point of view. Be careful. You may just be being manipulated. Very often, in order to gain a woman's trust, a man creates an illusion of intellectual superiority. This method of manipulation is based on the human fear of admitting one's ignorance. Therefore, instead of arguing with smart people, we tend to agree with them. How do you distinguish a manipulator from a really smart person? Manipulators use bookish, little-used words to make themselves seem smarter. Their speech is too pathetic for ordinary conversation. An intelligent person, on the contrary, does not boast of his intelligence, but tries to explain his point of view in a form accessible to the average person. Manipulators. Instead of the standard question, "How are you? How was your weekend?" they may ask you, "How is your precious well-being? Did you enjoy your weekend?" Smart people often slip in words you haven't heard of. Their use often leads to dead ends. "Don't you think she's being irrational?" Or, "I think his tie is a bit too eclectic, don't you?" Manipulators often use quotations of famous people in their speech. Just on this occasion, Goethe said, or, "But Schopenhauer thought differently." Very often such quotations are made up and have nothing to do with those to whom they are attributed. This is done deliberately to embarrass the interlocutor. Here, say, "How clever I am." In order not to succumb to this kind of manipulation, we suggest mastering the following techniques. Learn a few clever words that your interlocutor is unlikely to have heard of. And if he has heard of them, he does not know what they mean. For example, congruence, transcendence, and so on. You can invent several independent quotations and attribute them to famous people, just as your interlocutor did. Recently, I was rereading Dostoevsky, and he said, or, "But Hegel believed that." By taking advantage of your opponent's tactics, you will be able to resist his manipulations. Of course, this method of confrontation can be used only if you are really sure that you are facing a manipulator who does not have encyclopedic knowledge. Rule #44. How to resist the manipulation of your boss? Do you feel that your boss often uses manipulation and you are unable to resist it? A good boss is always a good manipulator. His main task is to control, and sometimes he has to use hidden levers of control to do so. How to spot a manipulative boss? Your boss has a democratic management style. He never shouts or demands anything, but you always comply with his demands without question. After all, he's your boss. You find him charming and even attractive. He is not stingy with compliments and always notes changes in the appearance of female employees. If you are personally asked to do something by your boss, you agree, for example, to work overtime without extra pay, to go on a business trip instead of a sick employee. You have never asked for a pay rise. Your attitude towards your supervisor is respectful and deferential. If all of the above applies to your situation, then you are probably being manipulated. How do you stand up to a manipulator if he is your boss? It's not an easy task. First, you need to learn how to demand. Start small. Ask for a day off at your own expense or a small amount in advance. I am sure you will not be refused. Then there is more. A salary increase, career growth, social benefits, etc. Of course, you won't get there all at once. Your embarrassment in front of your boss stems from his ability to manipulate people into trusting you. You are flattered that he notices your new hairstyle, new dress, and praises you for your successes. That is why it is just awkward for you to ask for material rewards for your labor. You have a feeling of awkwardness. You feel uncomfortable asking for something else from your already impeccable boss. It is awkward to reproach him for not appreciating your labor enough. But that's life. You have to convince your boss that you want to receive not only compliments and praise for your labor, but also a decent financial reward. Your position in the company will become stronger if you assert yourself. Show your ability to stand up to the manager. But you should do this without aggression and negativity. You can bring an element of play and flirtation into your communication with a male director. Respond to his compliments. Smile more often. Make jokes. Remember that communication between a woman and a man is always something more, even if there is nothing between them. Thank you, friends, for being with us to learn more helpful strategies on this topic. Subscribe, like, comment, click the bell, and watch our next video.